there too. So without any further delays.
First of all, I want to thank Diane for bringing me here, and she has been a wonderful hostess. And I have to be careful around her because anything that I mention that I enjoy, she immediately tries to supply it. So I'm full of roasted duck. She said that I would quack in the afternoon. We've had a really great time, and I appreciate her bringing me to Chicago. My pleasure to be here. I feel fortunate that with the support of my church, I'm a full-time pastor of a United Church of Christ in Cincinnati, Ohio, for a living, and they support my activity of doing things like this by not giving me a hard time when I go away. And the support of my wife, who's a civil litigation attorney in Kentucky, having a phenomenally booming practice at this time. I feel really blessed to be able to do things. And I couldn't have imagined 15 years ago that I would be in the position that I am now of going around and talking about spirituality, because I have to condense everything I'm going to say to you today to fit within the time. But very briefly, 15 years ago, I was a 38-year-old college professor at Northern Kentucky University in the art department, and I taught painting and drawing. And I was married. I had 2 teenage children. I'd been, at that time, tenured for over 10 years, and was doing well as a professor academically, enjoying the fruits of the academic life, and also pursuing my career as a professional artist, as a painter, trying to get exhibits, trying to sort of move out of the regional reputation in art scene, trying to establish unsuccessfully to establish some sort of national reputation. And more importantly, more relevant to this group, at that time I was a non-believer in spiritual things. Now I must digress for just a little bit to explain how that happened. I had grown up in a suburb of Boston, Massachusetts, and my parents had taken myself and my 2 sisters to the local Congregational Church. And if any of you are New Englanders, you know that the Congregational Church in New England is one of the, probably the predominant religious denomination. But there was no religious interest in the home that I ever detected. For example, we would never, ever pray, or I never saw anybody own a Bible or open a Bible other than a Bible that me and my sisters got when we were confirmed, we got a gift Bible. And the values of religion and the sort of deeper things of our religion were not part of the content of our home. My father was a very successful and aggressive businessman, and my mother was a nurse, and they were trying, he was a veteran of World War II and trying to pursue the American dream, which was about getting stuff, as George Carlin says, right? And we were accumulating 2 households of stuff, and we had a beautiful vacation home on Cape Cod, which recently was sold for a huge amount of money. And we lived in the finest suburb of Boston. But that was what life was about. It was about getting ahead and being successful. And my father's dream that I would go into business or become even better, his big dream was that I would become a dentist. And that would have brought our family up into the status, from my father's, second generation point of view, that we would achieve status in society. We would have arrived as far as he was concerned. So when I became an artist, to quote my dear departed father, I was the biggest disappointment in his life. And at the age of 18, with a 18-year-old wife and a baby, we packed it up into a 58 Ford and went up to San Francisco in 1966. And we all went out there thinking and believing, and we actually kept this illusion up for a couple of years, that it was the dawning of the age of Aquarius. You all want to sing along? We really thought that we were going to have this new world of peace and love and joy. And that whole thing went sour really quickly. By 68, people were saying, it's not here. It's not here. It may be up in Oregon in the woods somewhere. It may be in New Mexico at a commune, like at New Buffalo or something, but it's already passed. And then I went on, I got an undergraduate degree and my MA and MFA at the University of California, Berkeley, got very political. I was very political at Berkeley, very involved in the anti-war movement and stuff like that. And in '72, came to Northern Kentucky University at a brand new school without, at that time, they hadn't finished, when I got here to start teaching, they hadn't finished the one and only building. So I started, my first year I spent teaching in a barn. And our biggest problem was when the heating season came and the heat went on, it activated the smell of the manure in the barn, so the place was like very interesting, very and come on in, Rex.
Come on in, Rex.
Are you going to go?
Brent, come on in the circle.
Yeah. I like Rex a lot. He's a great guy.
As long as we stop for a minute, Rex is the director of the Baha'i Home, which has also helped to sponsor this event. So anybody that feels so inclined, please be sure to say thank you to Rex.
Thank you, Rex. The point of all this is that I was a functioning product of my society, and from the point of view of the 60s, most of the people that I was associated with thought I was very straight, because I was working full-time, I was going to school full-time, I was babysitting when I wasn't in school and when I wasn't working, so that my wife could work, and she worked 3/4 time, and I didn't have any time for the things that all my friends were doing. I was very envious of them, but I was a real straight guy. Just working real hard to try and realize the American dream, and try to prove to my father that I wasn't the bum that he thought I was, And I was self-sufficient and independent. And these are key things, because what had happened was I, along with millions of members of my generation, became totally disillusioned with the values and traditions of our society and rebelled against them. So we all thought that we were like existentialists. We were all reading, Camus and Sartre and Heidegger and stuff like that. We thought we were existentialists. We thought we were, some kind of socialist. We weren't communists. We were sort of socialists, sort of, peace-oriented people. We thought we were revolutionaries. We thought we were going to make a new world somehow. There would be a world without competition and without the pursuit of material things. I know this all sounds extremely funny now, but we really did believe we were on the vanguard of something. And we were doing things like, here's a little nostalgia if you remember encounter groups. See, I know if you really remember them, you laugh, because they're just like, you get in there and you yell at each other and talk truth, like, I hate you, I've always hated you, people would get very intense, confrontational. It wasn't a good encounter group unless half the people went home crying, And it was a wonderful time, and as I became a university professor, I became more and more convinced that the scientific, materialistic view of the world was correct. Therefore, life was this short little biochemical event that we experienced, and what you wanted to do was simply to maximize your pleasure and minimize your pain. And it would be like really dumb to go to jail, because that would maximize the pain and minimize the pleasure, unless you're into that sort of thing. So I was law-abiding. I was, outwardly a good citizen, tried to maintain that posture of being a good guy. And I did what, I adhered to the values of my peer group. And of course, this doesn't represent all of academia, it's just the people that I hung out with. We were heavy drinkers. Like, I drank every day, and in social events, I drank a lot. And, the fun thing to do would be to go out at night, and see a neat band or an interesting show, and go to a bar and drink and talk until the bar closed. And that was life. That was good. So I took a group of students in '85 to Europe. And on June 1st, at 11 o'clock in the morning, and this was the day before we were to return to the United States. And I had just been to Delacroix's home and studio and was gathering the students together to take them to the Pompidou Center. And I was talking to Monica Schoner in my hotel room. I went down to the ground, screaming and thrashing with what was soon diagnosed as a perforated duodenum. I don't know why I had it. It could have been from an ulcer that is unknown. My understanding is that 1 out of 5 people that have ulcers don't know they have them. They don't particularly have any symptoms. So you could have an ulcer right now, not even know. Or it could have been that same summer, Margaret Thatcher had a medical emergency, if you all recall, because she'd ingested a foreign piece of glass in her food. And I could have possibly had a foreign object that had caused a hole in my small stomach to break through. The sensation was like being stabbed or shot or something like that. It was extremely acute pain right here, exactly right there. I hate to even touch the stuff because it's still sort of tender to this day, but only on the inside, not on the outside. So this is acute pain on the inside. I was a big, strong guy. I played football in high school. I was tough and rough. I could have bench pressed like 375 or something like that. But this thing just turned me into a quivering mass of jelly. And I'm thrashing and screaming, trying to get through all this really quickly. My wife calls the desk calls an emergency service. A very bright English-speaking French doctor arrives in the hotel room, gets me up to the bed, examines me, knows exactly what's wrong, and administers a small amount of morphine, which he describes as just enough to get me out of the room and into the ambulance and to the hospital, because I'm going to be having surgery within half an hour. Because this situation is the kind that it's not very grave if you operated on it right away, and it would only be serious if it were to be not operated on. So, these two slight young Frenchmen, probably 19 or 20 years old, probably weigh about 140 pounds, come in and they look at me. I was a little lighter then, but I was just as big this way. They're like, and so they get me in a chair, and of course, that in a small French hotel, the elevator stops at the first floor, and you know where the first floor is, right? Yeah. If you've been there, it's one floor above the street. So we got a spiral staircase, and they have me in a chair. Right, and I'm in a chair, and this stuff's really funny, and they're carrying me in this chair down a spiral staircase. Oh my God. And I'm like having a near-death experience, like hanging under this chair. And we get in this little micro minivan ambulance and go, like, seriously, 80, 90 miles an hour through France, not stopping. This is downtown, Harry. What, can anybody do the siren? The European siren song? Yeah, thank you. That's the one. Which you only hear in World War II movies, or, right? They're very distinctive. When we get to the hospital, we go to the emergency room. I'm met by 2 lovely women doctors. They x-ray me, they diagnose me, and they send me off to another building several blocks away, the surgery building, to have surgery, which they tell me I'm going to have now. This is all happening really fast. Unfortunately, at the surgery building, if there were a surgeon available, he was unavailable to me because I was parked for 10 hours. And I'm only telling you this not because I'm not particularly bitter, although I'd like to punch that SOB. The surgeon never arrived. So for the 10 hours, I never had any medical attention whatsoever. And people say, well, what about, like, what about this and that? Nobody took my temperature, no doctor came into the room, I was connected to no machinery. I didn't have a blanket, I didn't have a top sheet, I didn't have a pillow, there was nothing, I was just parked. And it was a real bad situation because I was dying, and the doctors in the United States have told me that my life expectancy from the onset of this circumstance might be 5 hours. Are you a doctor? Well, anyways, I don't know if that's true or not, but this is, it's like having a burst appendix. Because the digestive juices, which were causing me such tremendous pain, were spreading throughout my abdominal cavity. And so instead of a point of acute pain, it was now becoming an area of acute pain, which was eventually extended, it was moving into my groin and coming up into my shoulders and throat. And what was happening is that the hydrochloric acid, the digestive juices, and the bacteria and enzymes and stuff were digesting. And of course, after this whole incident, several months later, I had to have more surgery to try and take care of the scarification and adhesions that were all throughout my abdominal area. So anyhow, at 8:30 that night, this happened at 11, and I was at that hospital by 11:30. I was in that surgery unit by 12, and at 8:30 that night, nurse came in and said they were unable to find a doctor, and they were trying to find one the next day. For hours and hours, ever since, shortly after I arrived in the surgical hospital, I was telling my wife, I think I'm dying. I don't think I'm going to make it. I don't think I'm going to make this. If somebody doesn't do something for me pretty soon, I don't think I can handle it much more. The pain was, it had all of my attention plus. And I was having a lot of trouble breathing, thinking. I was in a fetal position, very difficult to move. And that pain just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And the benefit that I received from the morphine wore off sometime that afternoon, I don't know when, but it had never stopped the pain, but it had made it manageable, but it had gone back into the screaming. I had begged and pleaded with my wife to get me a knife because I was going to, and I know this sounds incredible, but I'm glad she didn't get the knife because I was going to get the pain out of me. And I would have done it. I'm telling you on everything that's holy, I would have done it. I would have cut myself open and ripped my guts out because it hurt that much. Because it was like having, if you took a red hot briquette out of your barbecue, and just put it in there and then just kept fanning it and making it hotter. It was really, really bad. I had no religious faith. I thought religion was a hoax. I believed that what Marx said, that religion was the opiate of the people. I believed that science had a grip on reality, and anybody that didn't share a scientific view of reality was mentally unstable. I really believed that, and all of my friends believe it. My friends were in the biology department and the history department, and all over the university, and philosophers, and they're all over the university, and these were the smartest people that American society had produced. And we had a consensus of belief that religion and life after death and all that stuff was a fraud. It was for fools to sort of keep them plodding away in their little meaningless lives. But we, the cynics, the realists, we knew better than that. We knew when you die, you're dead. It's like turning off a light switch. It's over. So I am confronting my annihilation at the age of 38, which is I was feeling very robust and sort of maybe I'm going to peak here pretty soon. I could be peaking. And my wife has described that day as pure hell for her in the worst day of her life because here she is unable to help me in any way because she was rebuffed continuously by the doctors and nurses at the hospital in trying to get them. Fortunately, we had a very kind roommate who was a 68-year-old retired Frenchman by the name of Monsieur Florent, and his English-speaking wife as well. He spoke English, but her father was an American from World War I, so she was very fond of Americans, and they gave us an enormous amount of love and support, particularly to my wife, which was great. And through Monsieur Florent, I would implore him to tell people when they came into the room that I was dying and I needed help. And he would tell them that, and they'd say, there's nothing you can do, there's no doctor available. So the nurse said, we're unable to find a doctor. We'll try and get one the next day. She left the room, and I turned to my wife, who was sitting next to me in the bed, and I said to her, and this is really hard for me to do, and I apologize for being so emotional, but I said to her, it's time for us to say our goodbyes, because it's over now. So she got up, and she put her arms around me, and she hugged me and kissed me. And we told each other how much we loved each other, and we said those things that you say, like, I'll love you forever. And I remember when I said that, it made me feel so terrible, because forever for me was going to be about, like, if I had like 3 minutes, I was going to be lucky. So I felt really bad saying I'm going to love you forever, because I thought my love was going to end real soon. And she kissed my face, and I was really hard to talk, and actually her holding me and stuff was aggravating her pain, so it wasn't very pleasurable. And she sat back down, and she cried. And she had been crying all afternoon on and off, but now she really cried because she knew, and she cannot talk about this today. She has never healed the trauma of this day, but she can't talk about it and won't talk about it. She knew that we'd been, at that time, been married 20 years, her husband of 20 years, that she had real hopes that maybe someday I'd be for him. It'd be nice. The man that she loved and had given her life to and for his children. That it was over for him. And as I looked at her crying, I felt so sorry for her, because she looked so tired and so miserable and so unhappy, and I'd never seen her cry like that. And I closed my eyes, and I just thought to myself, look, this is it. I want it over now. So this didn't take any effort at all for me to do this, because I had been using all of my energy to do one simple thing, and that would be to inhale and then exhale, which had become very, very difficult to do. And it took every ounce of my limited supply of energy to inhale and exhale. And so I knew that all I needed to do was to not stop trying, and it would be the end. And so it was real simple, and that's what I did, and I went unconscious. Of course, I don't know how long I was unconscious. People always ask me, how long were you unconscious? And I'm like, how would I know? I mean, think of it, it's funny. And a short while. And then I was completely conscious, and I was standing next to the bed, wearing my hospital dickie, the one with the 3 strings in the back that only the top one's ever tied, so your butt is absolutely supposed to, making you look like the fool of the world, And I'm like, this is very strange, because I'm very aware of my circumstances. I mean, everything's clear to me. I know that I need surgery, and I've got a perforation in the one and all. I know all that stuff. But I'm not in that excruciating pain. It's sort of like I'm remembering the difficulty of the situation, but I'm not experiencing, because I'm feeling actually something quite different. I'm feeling very alive and very well. Extremely bodily whole and well. I don't feel ghostly, I feel real. And I did reality checks, like I bent my fingers until they hurt, a little more than I'm doing now. And I did it until it really hurt, and it's like, well, that hurts. And I crossed my toes, and I rocked on my heels, and I touched my naked backside, because I could feel a breeze on it. And, I felt my head, and like, I was perfect. Hey, things are looking up. Things are really looking up, and the room is light and bright, and everything is a little more real than it's ever been in my whole life. And as I'm scanning the room, I'm on this side of the bed, and Beverly's on the opposite side of the bed, and she's got her head in her hands, bent over. And as I look in the bed, I notice that the bed, although the sheets pulled pretty high up, is occupied. And the only thing that I can see is the back side of a head, which is steering a disturbing similarity to the back side of my head that I've seen on some double mirrors before. So I bend over the bed to look at the face that's connected to the body in the bed, and to my surprise, horror, and total confusion, it looks remarkably like me. Which, to any rational person, you know that this is not possible. So now I'm trying to think of, like, how could that be me? So the only thing that I could think of, and I was aware that this sounds really nutty, but it was the only thing I could think of. If you have a better explanation, I would still welcome to it. I was convinced that while I was unconscious, these tricky French had come up and made a quick mold of my face, put hot wax in it, and put it on a dummy, and put it in the bed. But the problem with that theory, that could conceivably work, but the problem with the theory was, why would they do that? Well, the only thing I could think of was that I was so mad at them for not giving me any medical attention this whole afternoon that they were messing with me. I mean, I would have used a stronger term years ago. You know that one. They were doing a thing on me. Now, why would they do a thing on me made no sense at all. And I also had liked the French. I loved their art. I mean, they made the best art, you know, in the whole world. And Monsieur Florent and Madame Florent were wonderful. And they were right there. I mean, they wouldn't have allowed it. Monsieur Florent never would have tolerated this great, you know, hoax on the fat American, right? I began to inquire of my wife. She was utterly unresponsive and not even blinking or moving in any way. It made me very agitated and very angry at her. I'm ashamed to say that that's when my wife didn't do what I wanted. You know, I pulled out the rage, you know, to get my way like a spoiled little brat that I was. So I turned to Monsieur Florent, and I put my face in front of his face, and I screamed into his face. And nothing. And I could see the spit coming out of my mouth as I was screaming at him, hitting him in the face. And no response whatsoever, just unblinking, staring right through me. I'm feeling, so this really shoots the theory of the French conspiracy to mess with me. Because now it's like my wife's in on the conspiracy, and Monsieur Florent, but see, it kept bothering me because, okay, maybe my wife hates me so much that she'd be doing this, but Monsieur Florent was so nice, and he never knew me. Why is this happening? So more confusion and more negativity. It's all negative. And the room is very bright, it's very real, very light, and I'm just getting full of more anger and disturbed. And people outside the room are saying to me in English without any French accent, Howard, we've come for you, it's time for you to go. We've waited long enough, we can't wait any longer. We've been waiting so long for you, it's time for you to go. So I go over to the doorway of the room, and I said to them, are you from the doctor? Because I'm terribly sick, I'm very, very sick, and I need to have surgery. And they said, we can't talk about this anymore, we've got to go, let's go. And so, and it's like, this is like the horns of a dilemma, because, okay, there's the sure thing of my wife, the only thing that I have to hang on to in this strange French hospital, you know what I mean? And but then there's this disturbing thing of the body in the bed, that in my heart, I know. I mean, in my heart, I honestly do know that it's me. But in my mind, I'm trying to think of some like logical explanation of how that could appear to be me, but it couldn't be me because it's not me. And then there's Monsieur Florent, who I have a strong feeling of attachment for. And then there's the people out the room. So I figure, okay, my best shot is to go get the surgery, and then everything's going to be all right. Now, I did give you an exact verbatim of the kind of conversation that I was having with the people outside the hall. So when I stepped through the lighted doorway, the light in the room, out into the hall was significantly dimmer and grayer and fuzzier. And there was maybe a dozen or more people out there. There were men and women, but they stayed back from me, and they were very difficult to discern anything about their features, except that they were adults. Very drab, and in my memory of all this is that it was all black and white now for some reason. If there was any color, it was just might be a little sepia tint here or there, at best, and like an extremely bad television picture. That's what it was like. And that was really disturbing. And then as I looked back into the lighted room, everything was the same there, but I had this really bad feeling that I could not go back into the room. That somehow the room was closed, even though there was no barrier and impediment to me, which was very weird. And the people are going like, hurry up, let's go. They're getting really insistent, so I started going along with them. And my assumption is, because they did not deny it, and I thought that I'd heard them affirm, although they never actually did affirm, we were going to a doctor for me to have surgery. And, you know, there's no reason why I wouldn't think that in a French hospital you would walk to your surgery. I mean, that would be consistent with the kind of care that I we're walking, and I can't describe, so there's no sense of time from now, there hasn't been any sense of time ever since this experience started. And I'd always had an acute sense of time because as a college teacher, you have to know the clock and work. You know, you just develop it as a skill. And I've been teaching for a number of years, and you know how long to let things go and how. So, but I'm very aware there's no sense of time. But if I were to recreate the walk that I'm talking about right now, I would have to walk like from Cincinnati to Columbus.
Wow.
It would be like that kind of duration. That it would have that feel to it, of just this extremely long, incredibly boring, uninteresting one. No features, no walls, ceilings, windows, furniture, nothing. Just a flat, endless plain that we're walking on walking speed. And I'm becoming like really worried and upset because I was brought into the surgical hospital on a gurney on my back, screaming in pain as they bounced me along over thresholds and things like that. But I knew that there's no way this hospital was so big that we could walk forever and never see a door or a wall or anything. And this is all wrong. You know, it's very, very wrong. But the problem is that we had lost the lighted doorway that we'd come from. That was gone. And the people were increasing in number and getting more and more insistent and rude. And some of them were beginning to talk about my buttocks. And then I would say, like, I can't believe somebody said that. And then they wouldn't say anything. They'd say, like, excuse me, I don't like people making, you know, I'm trying to hold my, like, thing closed, you know, I'm walking along. And they're like, and they said to me, shut up. Who asked you anyways? Stop talking. I'm like, I'm sick. Don't treat me like this, I'm sick. And they're getting, like, ruder and ruder. And it's getting uglier and uglier. I'm getting a really bad feeling about this, you know. But what is the alternative? I mean, what's the strategy to break this? And I never felt the least bit tired. Felt absolutely normal and no fatigue whatsoever. And we get to a point, and it's so dark I can't see anything anymore, and there's a lot of people around us. And I say to them, I'm not going any further, I'm going back, which was a complete bluff on my part because I'm in the dark and I have no sense of what back would be. I mean, any direction would be forward. It made no sense. And they said, you're almost there. And they started to pull at me, and I fought really, really well. You all would have been so proud of how well I fought as they played with me. And there were lots of them. And I know there were probably more than dozens and maybe thousands. I don't know. There were lots. And they were all playing with me like a cat plays with a mouse. A fat, well-fed domestic cat plays with a mouse. You know, they don't want the mouse to die. They want the mouse. You know, my cat in his younger days, he used to chew off a foot and play with the mouse. Right? You remember? You know, that'd slow the old mouse-a-rooney down just enough to keep him within territory. So that's exactly what they were doing with me. They would scratch, bite, punch, push, shove. And I fought, I punched, I kicked, but there were lots of them and few me. And it was very clear that they took a great deal of, I hate to use this word, pleasure, but actually what it was, they got sensation out of my pain and out of my torment. Because it wasn't really pleasure. These people seemed to be somewhat devoid of sensation. I knew that when I hit them, they felt nothing. They had no sensation of their own. They had lost their feelings. And these were people. But when they hurt me, it gave them sensation. And so that was gratifying to them to get. So what they were doing was they're sort of trying to elicit emotions from me so that they could experience emotion. And they weren't interested in nice things, you know. They were interested in strong, violent, painful emotion. And then this is a part that's censored and I never talked about. Then they did things to humiliate me. And that went on for a long time. And then when they couldn't hurt me anymore and they couldn't humiliate me anymore because they'd done whatever, I was laying there and some people were trying to sort of play soccer with me and I wasn't being very cooperative. And I heard my voice, this is very weird, say, pray to God. And I thought, my immediate reaction was, I don't believe in God. What a stupid idea. Pray to God. You know, second time, heard the voice. My voice, but I didn't say it. Pray to God. And I thought, too bad. You know, I don't even know how to pray. I mean, even if I were going to pray, I don't know how to pray because I don't pray. And in fact, I hadn't prayed in, looking back, in probably 22 or 23 years. So it was not something that was in my memory as anything that I thought I could do. And then the third time, pray to God, and I'm thinking, now I don't want to give you the impression that I believe in God or anything. I don't. It's just this voice, while being kicked around, is saying, pray to God. And I'm thinking, that's weird. When I was young, I used to say, Our Father who art in heaven, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, for purple mountains' majesty, waiting. No. God bless America, the land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her. No, that wasn't true. That was, I pledge, my Lord. It's not, I can't get one, because my thought was that a prayer was something that you had memorized and recited, because that's all I had ever experienced as prayer in my entire young life, was that you were given these things to memorize and then you recite. So I'm getting all this stuff, all these memory things. I even got a little bit of the quality of mercy is not strained to drop because of gentle rain upon the place. Beneath it is twice blessed. But I got a little bit of that in there. I'm trying to dig up some stuff. And accidentally, unintentionally, I lit some of this stuff. I sort of muttered some of this stuff. And the people around me, it was as if I was throwing scalding water on them. When I mentioned God, even in the most frivolous way, they found it unbearable, and they were saying to me in the most vulgar language that you cannot imagine. You can't imagine how vulgar they were. And I'm not going to attempt to recreate it because it's too awful, but they were saying there is no God. Stop mentioning God, and if you don't stop mentioning God, we're going to really hurt you now. Because what we've done to you so far is nothing compared to what we're going to do. And you know what I was thinking? Boy, they really hate this. This is great. Because I finally, revenge is mine. You know, I'm going to get back at them. So I'm trying to think of stuff that has God in it. You know, like I'm like, hey, God bless America! You know, like stuff. I didn't. It's just, and it really makes them angry and excited. But and they're also driven back by the mention of God. They can't bear it. They can't stand, even from a non-believer. I mean, this is the thing I'm trying to stress with this story. Even from a person who had no faith, to them it was too painful. Because they had their own issues they were struggling with. Believe me, they got issues down there. And, they retreat into the darkness and leave me alone. Now, this part of the experience is the longest part of the experience, and I have nothing to tell you about this part because they left me alone And I got to think about what had happened, where I was, and what was going to happen. And a brief summary is that I realized that I had gone down the sewer chute of reality into the cesspool of the universe. And that I was no longer a member of life on earth. This is from a person who doesn't believe in life after death, but I realized I was no longer a part of earth, and that I was somewhere in a cesspool with the other cesspool people. And I also realized, and I'm not proud to say this, that I more or less belonged in the cesspool because I wasn't that different than the other cesspool people. Because I had lived my life spiritually, clawing, biting, scratching my way to success. And believe me, I'm not proud of this. And not loving people, and not giving of myself, but only taking all the time, always taking. And now I was with this refined company. They had been refined down to their same essence of biting, clawing, scratching. And I felt that they were like me, I was like them, and I was where I belonged. Everything was the way it should be. I felt that, I didn't know these things, but I felt them very strongly, that I was going to be there forever and ever and ever and ever, and it was going to get a lot worse before it was going to get better. I was quite certain that we were at the beginning of a place that had greater depth and variety of experience that I was not looking forward to knowing more about. I felt that the only way that I would ever keep from being hurt so much in this place was, instead of being a victim, I would have to become, what would be the opposite of a victim? You know, what?
Victimizer.
I would have to become a victimizer. I didn't want people doing the things that they had done to me anymore. You can understand that without me telling you what happened. I didn't want that to happen anymore. If it's going to happen, I was going to do it to somebody, not have it done to me. I was tired of that. But in my heart, I didn't want to be one of them. And I didn't want to be in this place. And I didn't want to be with them forever. And I didn't want to be like them forever. And get worse and worse and worse. The situation seemed quite hopeless because I couldn't get back, I couldn't move. As far as the world was concerned, I knew I was gone. I was history. And in this world, there was no sympathy, no compassion, no nothing. So I'm sinking deeper and deeper into despair when a very vivid memory came into my mind. And the vivid memory was myself as a child singing in a Sunday school classroom, "Jesus Loves Me." And the thing that was so extraordinary about it was, I didn't at that time, I hadn't remembered that for more than 30 years. I mean, this was something totally forgotten that just pops up. But more importantly, I felt what I had felt as a child, which was absolute innocent trust in something other. And I must tell you that my faith and trust in my mother and father had died. My faith and trust in my wife had died. My faith and trust in my best friend had died. I didn't believe in anybody. I didn't trust in anybody. And what I was hearing from this little child who had been me more than 30 years ago was that I really trusted somebody and believed in somebody, except the problem was I didn't know who that was. It was a name. And what I had been taught as a child was that there was somebody out there who was very good and very powerful, who loved me very much, who kind of represented God. It was sort of like the name of God. From my childhood understanding, that's what it was. And so, this little argument in my head went real quick. Like, do I go with this or not go with it? Well, okay, alternative is like eternal hell, or give this a shot. Give this thing a try. No faith, right? I want to make that real clear. No faith, no belief. I just
want to believe what I had believed when I was a little child. And what I had believed as a little child felt so real and so pure and innocent and good. As a child, only as a child could. You know what I mean? Only a child could have that kind of thing. And I felt that. So I called him out, Jesus, please save me. And I always think that's funny because I sound like a Southern Baptist, I wasn't, I meant, I'm dying here, hello, if you're there, if you're real. And with that, a small light appeared in the darkness, and it became very, very bright. And it came over me. And in the light, I saw myself, I was lying on the ground, and I was all gore and horror and filth. And this light, like hands, came down, touched me, and began to lift me. And as I was touched and being lifted, all the filth, all the wounds, all the horror, outside and more importantly on the inside, everything's getting healed. And instead of pain and anguish, ecstasy, and this is the awful thing about NDE stuff, is that when you get to the good part, you're completely, there are no words to describe. If I could describe adequately what I experienced, we'd all get there. We'd be there right now, and there wouldn't be a person in this room who would want to miss it. But I don't have it. But he was, or this being of light, which I came to associate as a male person, as Jesus. He was strong, he was powerful, he was big, he was loving, he was good, but more importantly, he knew me intimately, and he loved me, he liked me, and he embraced me. He picked me up, put his arms around me, and held me close to him, and he stroked my back, and he loved me, and I just cried like a baby because I had been lost and now I was found. I was dead and now I was alive. And as I was crying, he took me up. We went straight up and out of that place, and we're traveling towards what appeared to be a sky full of stars, except that all the stars were in motion except for one focal point of stars way off in the distance, which I realized everything was moving in relationship to that focal point of light, stars, whatever. And as we were approaching it, with it still far, far away, I was getting even more intense feelings of love, but also of purity and goodness and holiness. I don't know. I was getting like tactile sensations of holiness and goodness. And that made me feel really, really bad. Because I thought to myself, I'm a piece of, see if you can guess the word. I was talking to a church group and I let the word slip out and I went, oh my God, I'm going to go to hell because I said the S word. Oh. Haka. I'm filth. I'm garbage. I'm from the cesspool of creation. And there's all this goodness and love and holiness. And this is what I'm thinking. And I thought to myself, they've made a terrible, terrible mistake. With that, we come to an immediate halt. And this person of light speaks to me for the first time. And from henceforth, now that he's spoken to me, I'm going to refer to him as Jesus because that's who he was and that's how I knew him and all. And he said, we don't make mistakes, you belong here. And I'm like, oh, he talks. He flies, he hugs, he talks. This is great. And we proceeded to have a conversation. And then he said, and he was just trying to be real, he was really casual and trying to put me at ease, and I'm really upset and freaked out. Got a million questions. He says he wants to bring over some people for me to meet. He said people, and then the people that came over were just like him, light. And more small talk. I'll tell you one funny bit that was good. In the dark place, I had lost my hospital gown. So when I was with Jesus, I wasn't worried about guys, right? But when the people came over, I didn't know
who they were until they began to talk to me, and I realized some of them were women. So now I'm talking to them like this, you know, because I'm embarrassed. And they thought that was very funny because they said they'd seen it before. Not of any interest to them. So we're feeling really chummy, and everything's going great. And there's about these 7 of these angels or people, whatever they're hanging around, and Jesus and me, and hanging in space. And they said, we want to show you your life. Now, oh, hey, that'd be fun. Let's, you know, very narcissistic. I'd love to see my life. Let's all talk about my life, my favorite subject. And so we're in a circle, and they're showing me images of my life. And it was interesting because the images didn't have backgrounds. It's like, you know, the theater where they just have props, but there's just a black curtain in the background. It was like that kind of show. And the images were from another point of view, not from the point of view of my life. You know, so it was not my memory. And a lot of things that we saw only became familiar, sort of like deja vu, because there were things that I forgot. And they're showing me these like dumb scenes of my life, like me knocking something over in the kitchen and my mother cleaning it up. And my mother not being mad at me. You know, a little frustrated or a little perturbed, but not mad, and she loves me. I'm like, so they're showing me this like incidental, unimportant stuff. Me and my sister's frolicking, me and my sister's fighting, and I'm a happy child. In a, you know, typically sort of loving, dysfunctional American household, like that we've all grown up in. And Jesus and the angels are all pretty happy with this happiness and this childhood innocence and frolic. But things begin to go sour in the family. And without getting into a big thing, like my father gets a promotion, and he's promoted way over his emotional capacity, the responsibility that is given. He's coming home way late with a lot of stress and a lot of anger. And we all start avoiding him like the plague because, like, you know, he's like the big bad bear. And the one thing you don't want to do is meet the big bad bear, you know, so it's like hide from dad, and then you get called for supper, and like, you know, somebody was going to get whacked in the head. My father had a great backhand shot that he could, you know, you know, just sneak up on you and get you in the head with his backhand. And I was withdrawing. My sisters were starting to do weird things with their lives that my father definitely wouldn't have liked if he had known what they were up to. And the whole dynamics is going bad. And the angels and Jesus are all feeling really bad. I mean, they feel real empathy, real sadness at the lack of love and support and caring that's going on. And as my life goes on, I see myself becoming increasingly self-sufficient and strong and successful and manipulative and cruel. And they're feeling really bad about this, and they're expressing how much this hurts them to me. But while they're expressing this, they're also continually letting me know that they love me. So I would like to make an important distinction between that God loves us and heaven loves us, no matter what we do, but they may hate what we do. Now this may sound strange, but you all do that with your children. I assure you that. I know many times as a parent when my kids did things and I had to pretend to punish them and be mad and stuff like that, but I just loved them. You know, I might have spanked them, but if you'd come in and spanked them, I would have, you know, cut your head off. You know what I mean? I always loved them. No matter how much they frustrated me, I loved them. Even though I was very, very upset with things that they may have done. And it was made very clear to me that God and heaven feels the exact same way about us. When we got through with my life review, which
I was extremely disappointed in, to say the least. Because they had absolutely no interest in the whole things that I'd spent my entire life pursuing. And everything that they were interested in, I had eventually given up as unimportant. Like I didn't think my wife was very important. I didn't think my children were very important. Use your imagination. You can figure out what I was like. You know, so they were secondary. You know, if they were fun and didn't get in my way, great. But you know, I just didn't have a lot of time for them. And I was really anxious to end my life with you. And they kept going on and on and on, showing me stuff. And finally we got to the end of it. And they said, "Do you have any questions?" It's like, phew, I get to change the subject, you know? So I started asking them like all the harebrained questions I can think of to ask them. Like, is there life on other planets? And what are they like? And when will we, you know, have they been to Earth? And they're answering all of my questions patiently, kindly. They used lots of audiovisual aids, which I appreciated as a teacher, that they were very, you know, they would show me images of things that I was asking. Like when I asked them if there were other life in the world, they showed me a parade of different life forms and stuff like that. We talked about history, and one of the things, we talked about war, we talked about the Holocaust, and we would like, I don't know whether we went there or not, I don't think we ever did. It was sort of like the image that they presented was so vivid, it was like we were in the middle of it, and like we were in World War II. We were in a concentration camp, you know, we were in the ovens, we went to a lot of places, and it was very intense, and there's a lot of things. Okay, fine, great, I'm not interested anymore, enough of this, thank you. And we talked about the future, and they showed me what God wants the future to look like, and should look like. And we talked about the Bible, and other things that Jesus did, and other places he's been, and we talked a lot about heaven. And heaven, if you don't know this already, you should know it, is fun center of the universe. Heaven is Disneyland to the nth degree, because we're the creator and all of the creators, little co-creators, which is what the position that we're all aspiring to evolve into, are up there cooking up like love and joy and excitement and new creation all the time. It's just, but you know, on an entry level, heaven is just getting to see and experience. You don't really get involved. You don't get any responsibility, for a long time until you're ready. And so finally, after all these questions and answers, I said, I want to go to heaven. Which, that's a real absolute no-brainer. Anybody on this planet who knew about heaven would want to go to heaven and would be willing to cut their head off, like right now, if that would get them to heaven. Unfortunately, that's not how you get to heaven. Mm-hmm. So that there's no easy way to get there. The only way you get there is by learning what it is you were down here to learn. Mm-hmm. Heaven is where we are known and loved, and where everybody who has sought God in their lives is. And there is nothing evil or rotten or bad in heaven, because that God, its heart's desire to go to the place where it gets to be, evil, rotten, and bad. And they said, you can't go to heaven. You're not ready. You're not fit. You're not the kind of person that would fit in heaven. You don't have the character to be in heaven. And I was devastated. Because everything that I could possibly want would be to go to heaven after I learned about it. And they said, you got to go back to the world and try and do it a little better than you did before. Live the kind of life that God created you to live in the first place. So we had a huge argument. And just, I've got time to just briefly run through some of the things we argued about. I told him that. I said, now this is me talking to Jesus and the angels. How arrogant I was. I said, you can't send me back to the world because the world is full of like cruel, evil people, and it's just full of ugliness and pain and suffering. And I said, well, yeah, that's a certain aspect of the world is like that, but the world's full of like love and beauty and good people. And if you're loving, you'll be surprised how much love you'll attract. And if you're evil, you won't be surprised at how much evil you'll attract. And if you seek the ugliness in things, you'll find the ugliness in things. And if you seek the beauty in things, you'll find the beauty in things. So you can make out of the world much of what you're going to experience by what's in your heart, what's in your being. Okay, fine. Why don't I go to heaven and like you take care of my wife and my kids because you do definitely a far better job than I could ever do. And then everything will work out great. And I said, well, actually, you have to go back and take care of your wife, your kids, and your mother and father and your sister and some of your friends because God created you to take care of those people. Your whole reason for existing was to be there for those people. And I'm going, like, my father and I hate each other. And they're like, yeah, we know. You're not doing a very good job with your dad. You know? And I'm like, I know. See, by the way, this whole conversation is all telepathic, so I never said a thing. I thought something, they put their thoughts back on. So, anyways, I'm like, I haven't been a very good husband. And it's like, yeah, right, you know, you could work on that. So, okay. I can't go back because if I go back, I'm going to make mistakes. And if I go back and make a mistake, this was all for nothing because I will have been bad. And I cannot possibly be perfect like you would want me to be perfect. And I knew they wanted me to be perfect. And they thought this was so funny. And they said, God loves you the way you are. Make mistakes. You were made to make mistakes. Just try and use the mistakes as learning experience and stop sort of indulging all the mistakes that you make. And that if you make any important mistakes, if you take that mistake to God and say to God with real, true sorrow in your heart that you've made a mistake, and give that mistake up to God and ask God for forgiveness, God will forgive that mistake. And that mistake will just not even be consequential anymore. It's history. It's gone. It's off the record. So you can live down there, make mistakes, learn from mistakes, and keep going. All God wants from us is wants a little growth, a little progress, you know, a little acknowledgement of who we are as the people of God, as the children of God, that we're supposed to try and improve and be a little better, treat each other a little better. And I said, well, what if I asked God for forgiveness and I can't believe God forgave me? They said, don't do that. They were very clear on this. They said, if you ask God for forgiveness, accept the forgiveness. To deny the forgiveness by carrying around guilt is an absolute insult to God. It's like if I went to my wife and said, will you forgive me? And she said, I forgive you. Everything's going to be nice from now on. And then every day I went around and said, you don't forgive me. You don't forgive me. You know? I mean, wouldn't that be insulting her? And we do that to God. And they explained to me that's a very bad thing to do to God. When God sets us free from our sins, rejoice, you know, be happy, and live life with joy. That's what they wanted to get across to me. So they keep defeating me at every turn. And so finally I said to them, I cannot go back to the world because no one has ever known me or loved me like you love me and know me. And if you send me back to the world, I suspect that you won't be hanging around like you are now, right? And I said, don't you know we've always been with you and we always will be with you? And I said, I never saw you before. I never heard you. Is that how you're going to be? Like you'll be with me, but I won't know you're with me, kind of? And they said, yeah, well, it's going to be the same. Well, I said, well, that's like not being with me. It's, you know, I mean, not ever hearing you, not ever seeing you, not feeling you, not knowing you. I said, it will kill me to lose this love that I have just found. I mean, can you imagine falling in love, like for the first time in your life, and then the person's saying, bye, you're never going to see me again. You know, you're going to a place where you won't know me. And I said, I can't do it. I cannot do that. I said, you're going to break my heart. Do you want to break my, you want to do that to me? And they said, look, there is a way to get in touch. And I said, what? And they said, well, you can't make us known to you. But if you pray really hard, sometimes, every once in a while, something's going to happen, and you're going to know we're around. And I said, well, like what? Well, I hear you. And they said, well, don't worry about it. Just know that you'll feel the love. You'll feel the love around you if you really come to us. But they said, don't expect it to happen every time you want it. It'll happen when we want it to happen, not when you want it to happen. And so I said to them and to Jesus, do you promise? 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 And I went around the whole circle, made every one of them promise. And they all promised. And I said, if you'll help me out, sort of give me a boost every once in a while, let me know, I'll go back. So with that, I was in the body, in the bed, in the pain, and a short while had passed, maybe like 20 minutes or so had passed, or half an hour, from when the nurse had come in and said, there's no doctor available. This was closer to 9 o'clock now. And as soon as I came back, the nurse comes walking back in the room, the same nurse, and she says, a doctor has arrived at the hospital and we're going to do the surgery right now. Some orderlies came in, bodily removed my wife, and they prepped me for the operation. Then, as I was being taken down on a gurney, past my wife in the hall, I gave her a big, happy smile in the midst of all my pain, and I said, everything's going to be wonderful from now on. And she totally misunderstood that. She thought that was like, the condemned man, saying something brave. But except I meant it at face value. I meant like, it's a whole new ballgame. And after, I got time to take my friend straight. After the surgery, I woke up in this recovery area. And I was on a stainless steel table, naked. And what woke me up was like a cold water, hot water, cold water, hot water. And what they were doing was they were washing my chest and abdomen. And there was this sort of maroonish stuff all over me that they were scrubbing off. It wasn't coming off. So they would take hot soapy water and scrub gently, but the water was really warm. It felt great. Trying to get this stuff off me. I had staples from stem to stern here. And then they would take really cold water and rinse off the hot, lathery water, and then they would just go and swim. And it was like, whoa, good, bad, good, bad. And I opened my eyes, and this nurse, I speak a little French, very little, but she looked at my eyes opened up, and she said, he's awake. And so she called to the doctor who was on the other side of the room, and he said, it's not possible that I couldn't be awake. And she went over and talked to the doctor and said, he is awake, come and see, his eyes are open. So the doctor's coming over the room, and I see him coming at me. And it's like, I'm mad at this doctor because he's, really given me a miserable day, so I don't want to deal with this doctor. So I close my, I've never met him. I've never seen this doctor. I don't want to see him now because I'm feeling really tired and grumpy. So I close my eyes. So he comes over. He chews out the nurse royally in French for bothering him, because obviously I'm asleep and I'm not awake. So he leaves. So she bends over and looks to see, because my eyelids are fluttering, to see if I'm really awake or not. So I pop open my eyes and give her a big smile and say hello. And she reels back in horror, and she yells out, he is awake, he is awake. So I immediately go, uh-oh, the doctor gets. So I close my eyes. And then I asked her, I said, is this heaven or is this the world? Well, she didn't understand what I said. And I said, is this the world or is this heaven? Because I want to go to heaven. And she didn't understand, and she was kind of upset because I was awake and talking. The doctor was starting to come back over and said, oh, I'm out of here. And I closed my eyes and I went out again. When I woke up, a little while a little while after I woke, my wife came. This was now Sunday morning. I'd just been out for a long time. She came in the room and I said to her, I said, this is my words, it's love, it's all love. And she said, I love you. I said, I know you love me, I love you, but it's all love. That's all there is love. And she said, lots of people love you. And I said, I know people love me, but you don't understand. It's just love. It's like, imagine just an ocean of love. And I said, all you have to do is just let go and go into the ocean of love, because that's all that there really is out there. And she said, that's nice, dear. Do you want to rest? And I knew we were in trouble. Because for the next several days, I'm trying to describe to her everything that happened to me. And she's convinced that her husband has lost his mind. One of the things that she knows happened, and we've talked about it since, is on Tuesday. So what I just told you happened on Sunday. On Tuesday, I was brought back up into the room that originally came to this hospital. And they took Monsieur Florent away for tests, and this was just before lunchtime. And I heard a voice in the room say, get airplane tickets and go home Monday because you're not going to recover well in this hospital. So I lift my head up a little bit and I look around the room to see who just gave me this advice, and there's no one in the room. So I said, I don't believe it. Now I'm hallucinating. I mean, I'm like hearing things because there's nobody here, and I distinctly heard this voice. I said, get plane tickets and go home Monday because you're not going to do well in this hospital. So I said, I don't believe this shit. The voice said, believe it. No, Beverly arrives at visiting time is 2 o'clock. I very strictly. She arrives at 2 o'clock on Tuesday. This is Beverly, the litigation attorney. Do you know how much she puts up with from me? You know, I mean, she's a tiger, right? I mean, I love that. I mean, that's one of the things I love her. It excites me to live with a tiger. You know, she's a powerful woman, and very assertive, very loving. She walks into the room, 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Tuesday, and I said, we need plane tickets for Monday morning because I got to go home Monday morning. I can't get well here. What can you do about it? And she says, and to this day, she's never been able to figure this out. She says, I'll go call my parents and see what I can do. Because we were out of money. We had lost our plane tickets, and we were in bad shape financially. So she goes and across the hall, payphone, puts a collect call into Iowa City, Iowa, to her mommy and daddy. They say, give us your number, we'll call you back. They call their banker in Iowa City, who last month had been in Paris, where someone had lost all their money and had to wire money from Iowa City, Iowa, to a bank in Paris. And he said, oh, lucky, I was just there. I know exactly how to do that. Tell her that there will be $2,000 at such and such a bank, at such and such an address, 20 minutes from now. She walks back into the room. She's been out of the room now 5 or 10 minutes. She walks back into the room, and she said, I've got to go get the money so I can buy the plane tickets so we can go home on Monday. By the way, I'm scheduled to be in this hospital for a month, and I'm really sick. I'm in bad shape. She arrives back about 2 hours later with 2 TWA business class air tickets for 8 o'clock from Charles de Gaulle Airport, Monday morning. And she says, I got the tickets. And I said, what in the world did you get those for? And she said, you just told me to get the tickets. And I said, you never do what I tell you to do. Why did you do that? That's stupid. How am I going to go home? I'm sick. I can't get out of bed. How am I going to be well enough? This is Tuesday. I'm going to be well enough Sunday to go home. And she says, what do you want me to do with the tickets? And I said, hang on to the tickets. And she said, we can't afford to lose these tickets like we did the other ones. And I said, just hang on to them. Give me some time. So the next day, Monsieur Florent is again taken away for tests. So I said, if there's anybody out there, I just want you to know this isn't funny because I can't afford to lose these tickets and I'm not well enough to go home. So what's the deal? Audible voice back, believe. So Saturday comes around. Friday, my temperature had been 104.5. And my kindly French nurse, when she read my temperature, which my wife and I both saw, shook it down and wrote on the chart, temperature normal. Because my chart hung on the end of the bed. Because they just don't care. It's like c'est la guerre, it's like you're in the hospital, tough, that's what you get in the hospital. So I'm in like bad shape Friday. I'm feeling really bad. I haven't been given any medication for several days or anything. I just got Saturday, I got the last of the staples taken out. This thing's pretty darn raw. And Saturday morning I wake up and I feel wonderful. So I have nothing to do while waiting for my wife because I want to leave this place. So I go into the bathroom. This is a guy that's not getting out of bed, not walking, it's like really sick. I go into the bathroom and I give myself a bath in the bathroom sink from head to foot, including washing my hair. This is a really sick person, but I feel great. I brush my teeth, I shaved for the first time I bathed. My wife has brought clean clothes, I put the clothes on. When she arrives at 2 o'clock, there I am, just as pretty as a picture, all dressed up, all cleaned up. I said, we're out of here. So we walk out to the nurse's station at 2 o'clock on Saturday afternoon, and I say to this nurse, whom this particular one that I didn't like very much, and I said, time for me to check out. Where's my checkout papers? And she said, I'm getting the doctor. You're not going anywhere. So she takes off, brings back this doctor, whom I'd never seen before. And he's telling me in broken French English, you're supposed to stay here. And I said, no, your mistake. I'm supposed to go to America. Where are my papers? Your mistake. You don't understand. I'm released today. And he goes, oh, okay, fine. And he fills out all these forms and releases me. We go to the hotel. This is Saturday. We go to the hotel and I mostly sleep. We get up real early Sunday morning. We're at the airport. And I just barely make it to JFK. We got a 4-hour layover at JFK. Oh, bad. And I'm doing really badly. Get off the plane, go to St. Luke's Hospital in Fort Thomas, Kentucky, and my GP, wonderful old-time doctor, meets me there. They diagnosed me and he says, I don't know how you got here. He said, I don't know how you ever made it here. Because I had extreme peritonitis, double pneumonia, collapsed lungs, non-A, non-B hepatitis, which that translates into no liver function, and some other things. And I was put right on critical, and I stayed on critical for a long time. I was there 5 weeks, and I was on critical most of that time. Problem was, I wanted to go home, and I don't mean 90 Hawthorne Street in Fort Thomas, Kentucky. I'm talking about my real home. And I knew I couldn't kill myself, but I didn't have to get well either, right? I mean, if I didn't, I didn't eat anything. I didn't want to get well, and the angels and Jesus had to come and knock me around a little bit, straighten me up in that hospital and later. Then, months later, when I was ambulatory, I wanted to go to church. And I didn't know what church to go to. I had not a clue. I didn't know whether I should be, I was like reading a lot of stuff, and I thought I could be Baha'i, I could be a Buddhist, I could be a Muslim, I could be Jewish, I didn't know what to be. Because I really knew that from Jesus' point of view, the thing was to love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself, which comes from the Torah, And that seemed to be in the things that I was studying about world religions, that concept. And I was very confused, and I was praying about this a lot. Finally, someone said to me, and had the ring of the angels behind it, you should grow where you're planted. Grow where you're planted. Grow where you're planted. What would that be? And I thought, aha. I was raised in a congregation which became the United Church of Christ. So I said to my wife, have you ever heard of the United Church of Christ? Is there one around here? She says, there's one a mile from here. I've been there many times because your daughter's sung in school concerts at that church. I said, it's a nice church. She said, it's a very nice church. And I said, let's go this way. So we go there, and I'm now ambulatory, which consists of me being able to go to the bathroom, do it, and then get back into the chair and then like sleep for an hour out of exhaustion. So off we go to church, and I'm all dressed up. I weigh 160 pounds, which is, I mean, guess what I would look like. I can't even imagine what I would look like at 160 pounds, you know. But let's just say gone, really gone, you know. Real intense, because I love God. That's all I care about. And I have to lean. I got my arm up around her shoulder, and she's like basically carrying me, and I'm sort of shuffling. So the church has started. They are standing and playing "A Mighty Fortress Is Our God," and the ushers open the doors, and I look up and I hear this beautiful music, and I look up in the ceiling. And the ceiling is full of angels, all radiant because they love the music and the praise. So I took a nosedive into the carpet. Unfortunately, the United Church of Christ is not Pentecostal. This is like a nice, straight, mainline, upper middle class Protestant church where people don't hit the ground. Last time someone hit the ground there, they were dead, you know. So the ushers have me by the arms. You know, are you all right? Are you all right? And my mother's like, I mean, my mother, Freudian slip. My wife said, get up. We'll never come to church again. I remember he's all right. He's okay. And the ushers were like, should we call the ambulance? Get 911? She said, don't call the ambulance. Don't call 911. He's fine. So they put me in a pew, and I'm sitting there, and there's all these beautiful angels all over the place. And I'm crying, and I'm singing at the top of my voice, anything I feel like singing, which has nothing to do with what's going on. And people are like, oh my God, that poor woman. That poor woman. And my wife was saying, this is the last time we will ever go to church. You blew it. She kept saying, you blew it. You had your chance. Now we're not coming back. So all week, I had to do contrition. You know, like, please give me another chance. Please, I'll behave. I won't fall down. I won't sing out of turn. I'll be good. I'll keep emotional. So we went again, and I realized about church that imperfect people, an imperfect world, you know. But here are some people we're trying to acknowledge God, whatever that might be to them. And for every single person there, that could be something very different. So for some people, God might be a punishing father, and for some people, God could be an amorphous bowl of love or jello or whatever. I mean, but it didn't matter. That they were there trying to expand their hearts, expand their consciousness. And the preacher was making these really great words about how we should be good to one another that nobody was paying much attention to, but I mean, at least the thought was there that we should try and love one another and be better people. And I thought, this place is great. This is as close to heaven as you're going to get in this world. And so I was pretty excited about it. And the minister came and visited me, and I said I wanted to be a part of it. And I was just delighted to be a part of it. And as time went on, and the more I got involved, I realized what a tough job it was. Like, one of the really dumb things they do in churches is they give new members like the job that nobody else wants. And you know what that would be? If you don't know, I'll tell you. Teaching the teenage Sunday school class. That's the job that nobody wants, that they give the new guy or the new woman, thinking, oh, well, they'll just be great. These kids will chew them up and spit them out. You know. So I got the teenage boys. It was, we had a ball because I didn't have a church background, so we were able to talk about drugs, sex, and I could tell them all about different drug experiences I'd had and stuff, and they were all ears, you know, like, what about acid? What about well, let's see, acid. 750 megs, that's way too much. So I was, for the kids that stayed with me, all three of them, and then the minister said, you need to go out and visit the sick. So he gives me people in nursing homes to visit. And my first time out, I'm like horrified. It is a little too real, especially in the olfactory department. The people that I'm visiting, but I do it. And he starts giving me all these tests, and the more I get involved, I realize that the church is trying to do something that nobody else in the world is trying to do. And I felt quite unappreciated at the university because there was no room at a state university to express the spirituality that I wanted to investigate. And all my old friends thought I was quite mad. So I kept asking my wife how she felt about me going into the ministry, and she thought that was a really bad idea. So in '88, one night, I've been praying and praying and praying. In '88, one night I said to her, I still want to go to the ministry. And she said, if you want to go that badly, go ahead. So the next day, I was interviewing at a seminary so that I could do a 3-year, 90-hour graduate program in Christianity, theology and Bible, and pastoral care and stuff. And I was ordained in '92. And that's the story. It's been a really interesting ride. I feel real badly sometimes because I know what God wants. It was made crystal clear to me what God wants. God wants us to be really, really good to each other. To be really caring and kind and loving, and to care for each other. And I mean everybody for everybody, all over the whole world. God wants peace. God wants us to be happy. If you were any kind of a human being at all, you want your kids to be happy. I have a son and a daughter and 5 grandchildren. I want them to be happy. I don't care how much money they have, as long as they're, out of the cold weather and have enough to eat. My son-in-law is a carpenter and he's the finest human being I know, and he doesn't make a lot of money, but that's what God wants for us, and we're not doing it. We're missing it here. God really doesn't like us hurting each other. God doesn't like the put-downs that we use on one another, whether they be economic or racial or cultural or social or whatever. Our society is full of put-downs, demeaning us, all making us feel like we're deficient. I only know a few people in the world who don't have some really bad self-esteem problems and don't feel worthy of God's love. Does that make sense? I mean, one of the people I know who does feel worthy of God's love has terminal cancer. He's a Catholic priest, and he's one of the few people I know that is a real Christ-like person because he's cleared up most of his issues with God. God doesn't like what we're doing to this beautiful playground that he made down here called the world. He's very unhappy about the demise of the plant and animal kingdom because the Bible tells us that we were created to be stewards, or another way of putting it would be gardeners, and instead we're destroyers. And God has been trying to get this message across for a great deal of time, and we've been ignoring it for a great deal of time, and God's very frustrated with our rebelliousness. And so one of the things that I can do with my life as long as I'm here is one, work on my own spiritual training. And the first thing I have to do is get myself straightened out. And that's going to take more than I'm going to have years. I mean, if I lived another 200 years, I'd still be working on getting myself squared away. So I got lots of work to do there. I've got my wife and my kids and the rest of my family and my colleagues and the people that I work for at the church. And an opportunity to, without trying to be obnoxious about it because that's such a big turnoff, express simply and straightforwardly what I believe is God's will for every human being on this planet. It's so simple. It's so easy.
The good part of it is that there's a God deal. I think I talked about this over at your place the other day, the God deal, where if you try and do something nice for God, like speak the truth or love somebody, or even love somebody that's really unlovable, God will give you a blessing as sort of a little reward or encouragement for doing a good thing for God. And I have been so blessed that now I'm all caught up in the guilt of like, God's too good. God has, I mean, for what little I do, God does so much more for me in terms of giving me love and peace in people. I'll give you a concrete example. I didn't really know Diane. She didn't know me. We'd met briefly a long time ago. And she called me up and said, "Will you come?" I said, "I'll come." And now I have a friend. Right? She loves me. I love her. And that's just one way that I'm blessed. And it's so neat because when you do stuff for God, even though it's imperfect and clumsy, God just does neat things for you. And I met Rex, and I met his wife Julie, and Rex loves me, and I love Rex. You should know Rex. He's a neat guy. And can he tell stories? I wonder, who likes to tell stories more, you or me? This is a toss-up, right?
Very much so.
Yeah. We could talk for days, or I feel like I could talk with Rex for days. I'd tell a story, he'd tell a story. Just great. You have nothing. We have nothing to lose except for our isolation, our loneliness, our sense of being separated from one another, from God, and everything to gain by trying as poorly as we do try. And I tell you, I make mistakes all the time, and I misunderstand, and I get angry. I was ready to tear this woman's throat out the other night. Fortunately, members of my church didn't let me do anything. They told me to calm down. This woman insulted me publicly in church, and I was just so mad Wednesday night. But nothing happened. And now I've had days to think about it, and I'm going to think about how I'm going to be nice. We don't have to be perfect. We just have to try. That, if I could leave you one thought, all God expects of us is to just try. Just make an effort. God does not seek perfection. He loves us the way we are. He just wants us to try and be good. He wants us to try and be loving. He wants us to try and be caring and compassionate. He wants us to try. Hey, try hope instead of cynicism. Try peace instead of violence. Just try these things out for a while. See how they would work if you were to give them a try. That's all that God is asking of us. And I hope that, with all of my heart, soul, and might, could do that. Give that to God. Give that intention of trying to God. And perhaps we can all do that. And I have been assured by the very highest of authorities that if we were to do that, things would change really rapidly around here. It would be unrecognizable. The world that we could create would look like a paradise compared to the world that we have. And I'm not telling you that it would be perfect. I'm just telling you compared to what we have. Because God, when we neglect or harm one of God's children in this world, whoever they are, wherever they are, whatever, it's just breaking God's heart. Because we're so precious to God, every one of us. It's got to end. Amen?
Amen. Amen.
If anybody has any questions they'd like to ask, if you feel like you need to go, please go ahead and leave. But if you want to stay a little bit and ask some questions, please feel free to do that.
I just have a quick question. What
Yeah.
happened to your